another Music Gear Monday. I'm Carl Carell. It's my birthday week. I've been saying it's my birthday month since the beginning of May. I've been celebrating being alive or making it through another year. 2020 was rough, so I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you're here with me. It's been a journey. It's been a journey from the beginning of this channel. I know it's only been 6 months since I started this channel, but I've been doing these type of videos for the last 2 years, maybe even longer than that. And it's been fun. It's been great to share with you guys. It's been great to grow with you guys, to learn things from the community, and to show you guys kind of the different tools and tricks and software that I'm messing with, because this type of stuff excites me. It gets me hype and it keeps me going. But this week I'm going to share a quick little tip on how to chop samples in Ableton. There's tons of ways to do it. These are kind of just the quick ways that I use to chop samples and have some fun in Ableton. So without further ado, let's hop into Ableton and I can show you what I'm talking about. We're here in Ableton and we're looking at a session that I was working on, and this long strip of audio here is just a bunch of different drum breaks. Sometimes I'll go through and I'll just chop samples and save them for later. And that's kind of what this session is for. A quick way to chop samples that my buddy Slade also covered on his channel, I'll link that below, is with comping, a new feature inside of Ableton that they recently added. So if you add an audio track like this long audio track here, if you right click on that channel and go down to show take lanes, it drops down all your different take lanes. So if you're recording, it actually shows you your recorded take lanes. But right now, since this is an audio track that's already there, it's only going to show you that live audio track, and that's what this is right now. So if I were to slide this over, you see how it grays out down here? That means you're not using that right now. So what I could do is I could scrub through this audio, highlight pieces that I want, hit enter, hit enter, hit enter. And those are maybe those are, parts that I want to keep, things like that. And so if I insert a couple of take lanes, I could actually drag this samples down. I could drag all this audio down here into these take lanes, so I don't have to span this entire strip of audio here. And then I can look for those specific takes that I want. So I could highlight stuff, hit enter, I could go and be like, okay, I don't want that. What do I want? Highlight, enter. But that's kind of a quick way to scrub through samples and find things. If you are just kind of scrubbing samples, you could do a whole session of just scrubbing samples. There is a couple other ways that I'm going to show you here. So you can always drag your sample onto a drum rack, and then it creates this sampler for you, and it gives you the option to use your MIDI controller and find different sections, and it's all based on your preference, really. So I can slice this. If I hit slice, what it's going to do is kind of break out these different slices based on transient. So just so you see what I'm doing, I'm over here on the push. Hopefully you can see that. Basically is going to give you that chopped up sample. It's going to give you that sample in chops. So if you could find a good section that has breaks in it, so I'll drag this one down here, for example. So I dragged this drum sample that I got on here, and I drug it onto the pads. And so if you look down here on the sampler and we zoom in a little bit, you could see I have it sliced, and each one of these slices puts it on a transient. So you have a snare, you have a kick, you have a little drum kit here that you can utilize on your pads. And it breaks it down. It gives you that on any MIDI controller. So a lot of times I'll find myself inside of Ableton just kind of doing stuff like this. I'll get a drum rack. I'll drag that drum rack down here. I'll take something like a piano sample like this guy right here, drag it onto the drum rack, slice it. And you could change how it plays as well. That's another thing that you can mess with inside of your little sampler here. You can change it to play through. So So that way the sample keeps playing, but you can always trigger it on the beat. The other way is poly, where you could play multiple samples at once. But that could get messy, depending on what it is. Sometimes you have some sort of piece of music that you want two parts playing at the same time. You could do that. That's kind of a cool way to quickly chop a sample inside of Ableton. But you also have plugins. So sometimes I will use Serato Sample. And Serato Sample is another great sample-based plugin. It's not free, so the sampler that I'm showing you inside of Ableton, this sampler right here is free, and I actually did a video on Serato Sample versus your built-in sampler. And the main difference in Serato Sample, as you can see, when I drag that sample in there, it kind of breaks it down into transients, and you can see it based on color, from loud to soft. It also gives you the BPM of the original sample, and it also maps to the BPM of your session, which is awesome. And it uses similar time stretching and similar beat mapping that you see in Serato, which is amazing. Like, it also maps your key. You could do detuning on it as well. You could change the pitch on it as well. And you could do a thing called find samples. So if I click this button here, find samples, it automatically looks for those samples. If there's something that's interesting, it automatically tries to find those things. It sends that to your MIDI controller. So it automatically gave me A through T here at the bottom, you can see. And then these other ones that I'm tapping are the ones that I'm adding. You can always add your own. You could always hit find sample again. It'll research, set random, set slice. So you can kind of have it be unpredictable or more predictable as you want it to be. Each sample has its own parameter as well. So you could bump the level up. You could filter it. You could change the attack on it. Even on your built-in sampler, you have similar options. So you can bump the filter on it, the resolution on it, you can bump the fade on it, you can cut it, you could do high pass, low pass, you could do a lot on these samplers. But the main thing is getting that piece of music or whatever you want to sample, dragging it into your sampler and kind of just messing around with it to see what you can find. That's the biggest thing that you don't want to forget, is doing the creative part first. So dragging that sample, popping it into your sampler, and then playing, having fun, you know? So I feel like that's the biggest part, and that's what I wanted to show you, is just kind of quick ways to grab samples, boom, and drag them into a sampler to play around. So another way to sample or resample or do weird things to pieces of music, for an example, I have this loop that we were just playing with. So this piece is from that loop. So I really stretched it out and added a little bit of granular effect to it, just to kind of make it interesting, a little bit of texture. And so this is just a different way of sampling as well. I could record this track into another audio track. What I did was just take that audio, I went into the waveform here, and I actually changed it to textures, bumped the grain size way up, and bumped the flux size down to kind of give it this stretched out kind of feeling to it. And then you have things like these different delays and different reverbs that you can mess with. So what I would typically do to create a sample out of that, I would insert an audio track, or I would send this audio track right here that I use these piano samples in, and I would send that to this track right here that I just created, and then I would record that. So very calming, very cool little sample that we just created there. To get that effect, like I said, I really stretched the time out. And so you could do that to any sample. You could warp it. You could change the texture to beat, tone. You know, you could repitch it. There's a ton of different options, but that just comes from kind of playing around with the sample. And I started out using that comping method So the same method I was talking about earlier where you chop the sample. So if we wanted to, we could take one of these drum samples. We take this drum sample here. And so let's warp it, and then let's start this. Let's go ahead and let's loop it. So that drum loop right there is just a chop sample that we just made. So what you could do with that chop sample, it's wide open. It's wide out there. We can do so many different things. You can change the BPM of it to half or whole or whatever. So now it's a dramatically different feel, right? And we could layer our dramatic chords over it. Now it's like a movie score. Now you're in some weird, you know, lo-fi, sci-fi type of vibe, type of energy. It's weird. It's crazy, right? So anyway, that's just a quick way to use samples or chop samples or have some fun in Ableton. Tons of different ways to chop samples in Ableton. I linked a couple in the description below. You should go check out. A lot of creative people out there. If you're watching this and you have an interesting way to chop samples, put it in the comments below and let me know. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to see it if you have videos out about it. We're gonna do some more tutorial type of videos on this channel coming up here in the near future. That's gonna be it for Music Gear Monday. We're gonna keep it simple and fun. Make sure to tune in next week. I'm actually going out of town for my birthday. If you wanna wish me a happy birthday, make sure to hop on my IG or come over to Twitch and come chat with me. Again, I'm Carl Carell. That's gonna be it. We'll catch you here next week. Peace.